you people? We're Americans.
In this movie, the monster has our faces. The fact that everyone was going to get to play two roles, I thought of that as the sort of big draw for my actors to do this film.
One of the first things he said to me was, Lupita, you're gonna be very tired. And he delivered on that promise.
With this opportunity to play two roles, she really rose to the challenge, and it was crazy.
I tried to make sure that there was a through line for the two, but also very distinct differences.
Adelaide really centers the audience and gives us an emotional connection with someone throughout this movie.
For Adelaide, I did a lot of research on imposters, war criminals and stuff like that, childhood trauma and how that affects both Adelaide and the Red character.
When Lupita was playing Red, something entirely different happened. She would walk into the room and you could just feel it sort of ice over.
One of the words that Jordan used to describe her movement was the word cockroach. The thing about cockroaches is that they scurry, and it's so hard to hit them, you know? But then at the same time, they are so still that they can often go unnoticed.
I can't believe this is not the most fun.
Jordan was very keen to have the audience identify with both characters so that there is this discomfort that you feel in the end because you've been rooting for someone who turns out to have been the criminal.
Winston doesn't know it, but he basically is Gabe. He thinks the character is like based on me or something. No, I mean, when I met Winston, it was like, no, okay, yes, just do that.
That's what I'm saying.
What about dinosaurs?
We had a lot of discussions just about what kind of guy he was, what kind of father he was. And I wanted an all-American dad scenario. And I think we achieved that.
The Wi-Fi's not working.
You don't need the internet, you got the outer net.
Good one.
Tráilers. Visita mi canal.
Winston is just such a rambunctious character and a really courageous actor and a generous one. So it was great to just trust our chemistry and to play off of it.
Are you really not gonna kiss me?
Abraham is a partner. He's there to make sure everything works, and he supports the revolution. I enjoyed being able to do things that connected the two.
No!
Shahadi and Evan were just the warmest, most present kids.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Shahadi is a true professional as an actor. She is smart, and for such a young woman, she can do anything.
Jordan told me at the audition that he wanted Zora and Bad Zora to be so alike, and he wanted Bad Zora to be so intrigued by Zora, even though, you know, she's trying to kill her. And he wanted Bad Zora to be sleek and pristine and powerful.
Get off my car!
Umbre is probably the scariest one in the bunch, for me. And that character holds a lot of menace.
Jason is a very unique character. He's more into like magic and he's an observer. And then Pluto, on the other hand, he's all torn apart, he's dangerous, and he's a wild animal.
Evan Alex is a ball of energy. He is so fun to work with.
He's always making jokes, and he's always so goofy. But he gets in acting mode, and we're like real brother and sister.
One of the reasons I love genre is because they push these visceral reactions, these involuntary reactions that ultimately teach you something about yourself, if you want to look.
The truth is that we all possess the duality within us, and I think that's a really powerful statement to make.
The hardest thing about shooting this movie was figuring out how to have the same actor playing two different characters in the scene.
This film was such a challenge because I never met my scene partner.
We're used to shooting out of order, but then to have every character have a double of themselves, a good and a bad version, mind-bending.
There was a girl and a shadow. The two were connected.
working opposite as Adelaide or to Adelaide as the other. I was really quite nervous about that and confused and concerned with how that was going to work.
You have to go through an entire process of wardrobe and makeup to get the characters sort of turned over. So that means you generally have to do one side in one day and then flip.
The challenge was which side to shoot first.
Yo.
I discovered that the best thing to do is to always shoot the dominating character in the scene first, because I could bank that and react appropriately.
So we do we're American line anyway.
Yeah, we'll do it anyway, just to bring us into that energy. In one pivotal scene, we have our 4 family members acting across from themselves as the 4 villains. This takes a lot of planning, a lot of scheduling.
Cameras who's trained on bad gate will go into that beat. I'm not going to call it. I'm going to let you guys do it because Adelaide cues bad gate.
The first day of shooting that scene, I would be good Zora, and then the second day, I would be bad Zora. I had to channel all that energy of what had just happened.
The way Mike Giolakis and I shot, we're not overplaying the idea that we have 2 actors in the same shot. We're shooting it as if we had 8 actors in that scene.
Jordan does such a good job of mimicking.
When the girl ate, her food was given to her, warm and tasty. When the shadow was hungry, she had to eat rabbit.
He really got a kick out of that. But it was helpful for me because I didn't have to watch playback, and I could just focus.
Okay.
On the role I was playing in that moment.
It's an enormous challenge, but a really fun challenge, really fun puzzle to figure out.
Okay, looks good. Everything looks good. Everything's in order. You doing your job? You doing your great.
The continuity of it all, you have to add the blood and then you have to take away the blood. Our special effects team is incredible. They've created these blood mats that are rubber but look like liquid. Put them down, peel them up.
The visual effects are so closely entwined with the narrative. It's kind of fundamental to this story, creating these doppelgangers and allowing them to kind of play in the same scene together. There's actually a pretty rich legacy of this kind of work in visual effects, all the way back to Parent Trap, the old-fashioned straight down the middle split. Jordan would call those the Haley Mills. You know, I'm thinking on this shot maybe it's a Haley Mills. But in addition to that, and kind of more contemporary, are things like head replacements, face replacements. You might have Lupita playing against her stunt double or her picture double. And it's fantastic because in all those cases, they've really kind of studied how Lupita moves and acts. They're emulating that. And so we get a scene with the 2 of them. We do a big switch over, and now I have source material on either side.
And at the end of the day, the effect that is needed is that you don't even think twice about whether or not these are 2 different characters. The look of the tethered is probably the most important design choice we could make. This is our monster. A lot of those decisions was creating an iconic look that utilized very grounded elements, not going too fantastical or over the top, but allowing them to be people. What Scott and Tim did with makeup is pretty special.
We looked at the practical part of what the doppelgangers were. They live underground. They live this crazy life where they have no real control over their actions. And we thought, how would that manifest itself physically?
These are people who have been deprived of sunlight. We took their eyebrows away, sort of sunk their eyes.
Jordan looked at the designs and said, let's make them a little bit subtle vampires. And so we pushed some of the looks a little bit further. There are a few prosthetics. We have a full burn scar on the character played by Evan. That idea certainly had its own development. At first, Jordan wanted it to look like he had had small burns over the course of his life, and then he decided, no, this is going to be the result of one big burn. We have on Bad Kitty's face self-inflicted scissor representing her version of plastic surgery.
No! No!
A lot of what makes the tethered is their hair. On either side of the tether, Camille really created some iconic looks.
There tended to be a little less personal care involved in the doppelgangers. Winston has a nice groomed beard. His bad doppelganger just has this biblical beard.
The choice of putting Adelaide in sister locks, I haven't seen a central character wearing sister locks, and I think that alone is an important piece of film history. To get real black women's hairstyles represented in film and in lead roles.
It's our time now.
The red jumpsuit. Just the idea of being able to utilize a flash of red going by in the darkness to signify your monster. There's some allusions to some classic horror characters, like your Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger. On top of it, there's a connotation of escaped prisoner, also a cultish element. I think great horror is often grounded, which allows something crazy to be going on, but you try to marry it with reality. And I don't see myself moving far from horror anytime soon.
Please don't, no.
Horror has always been the way that I personally deal with my own fears.
It's us.
I love the genre for that reason, and I love the horror aesthetic.
Jordan is truly the definition of an auteur filmmaker, and I think he's one of the most talented filmmakers working today.
I loved working with Jordan. I'm just awestruck by his attention to detail and his knowledge of the horror genre.
When you don't get it, quit, and then look up at it.
He pays homage to the filmmakers and the films that he loves.
Some of my favorite horror films are A Tale of Two Sisters. It's a Korean film and it's beautiful. I love The Birds. I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I think my favorite horror movie of all time is Alien. I think the ground that it broke in creating a elegant, singular, new type of monster, new type of environment, it's just movie magic. I think one of the great films that carried a powerful social message is Night of the Living Dead. And that movie was about race, even though they don't really talk about race in the film. I wanted to sort of follow that approach with this movie.
Hierarchy! What kind of white shit?
Jordan wanted to follow Get Out up with a genre movie. And so I was very excited that he wanted a much bigger canvas.
This is straight from his warped mind.
It's a very unique brand of filmmaking.
I felt the beginning of why Bad Kitty wants to cut Adelaide's face.
His voice, which is so unique, and his vision, which is so unique, you can feel in every single decision.
And action.
I tend to draw inspiration from my own fear. At some point I asked myself, what's the scariest thing for me personally? In this case, it was the idea of seeing myself.
What are you people?
And then I think about what that's about. Why is seeing yourself so scary?
So oftentimes we feel that the monster is from outside of ourselves. But in this story, the monster is really within our very selves.
They think like us. They know where we are. They won't stop until they kill us, or we kill them.
I love making films that are both terrifying but also fun. That's really what I'm going for here.
I think he calls it a thoughtful popcorn movie. You know, it's so entertaining and interesting and fun and scary, but at the same time does make you think and does make you look at things that you didn't look at before or look at things in a different way.
I love the idea of subverting really idyllic locations. And Santa Cruz has just a real fun vibe on the amusement park and the boardwalk there. I love giving the audience a vacation in the middle of the horror. It reminded me of one of my favorite directors, Hitchcock, of course, with The Birds and Vertigo. And then, of course, there's a little shout out to Lost Boys, which is the first movie to really subvert Santa Cruz that I can remember.
He knows the world that he's created. He knows the circumstance and the scenarios that he's created. You can trust all the things that are coming out of his mouth because he has a clear idea of what he wants.
Give me a little bit more time between the lines.
Jordan has this way of creating terrifying moments, but at the same time infusing them with this comedic relief that actually just makes the experience more visceral.
I think horror and comedy are both really great ways of exposing how we feel about things. I find the comedy that emerges from a scene in a horror film is very necessary to release the tension, give your audience an opportunity to emotionally catch up and get prepared for the next run of terror.
So, does this mean we get their car?
Jordan is making his favorite movie all the time. So that passion, you know, that kind of enthusiasm is infectious.
Wow, 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 wow. Let me just show you real quick how good it looks. I think all great horror has a social message of some sort. When it works, it's tapping into something that we're suppressing. I have a definite world of things that I'm trying to say with this film, all relating to our duality as human beings and the guilt and sins that we bury deep within ourselves. And I'm curious to see what the audience sees in it.
All right, so right now we're filming the scary scene.
Ready, and action.
The idea for this movie came from a deep-seated fear in doppelgangers. I love the doppelganger mythologies and different movies that have dealt with them. And I just desperately wanted to make my offering to that pantheon of evil double films.
They think like us. They know where we are. They won't stop until they kill us, or we kill them.
Throughout mythology, doppelgangers often represent bad omens or a foreshadowing of one's death. So I just wanted to sort of pinpoint and work off of that just extremely primal fear.
What are you people? We're Americans.
One of the central themes in us is that we can do a good job collectively of ignoring the ramifications of privilege.
They created the tethered so they could use them to control the ones above. Like puppets.
I think it's the idea that what we feel like we deserve comes, you know, at the expense of someone else's freedom or joy. You know, the biggest disservice we can do as a faction with a collective privilege, like the United States, is to presume that we deserve it and that it isn't luck that has us born where we're born. For us to have our privilege, someone suffers. That's where the tethered connection, I think, resonates the most, is that those who suffer and those who prosper are two sides of the same coin. We can never forget that. We have to fight for the less fortunate.
Lost down here, trapped in our loops, too consumed by our obsessions, routines to even see the tether.
This summer, 6 million people will tether themselves together to fight hunger in the United States. Visit your local record shop to find out how you can be a part of Hands Across America.
When I thought to put the Hands Across America in this film is an example of this American duality. That here you have this event. On the one hand, it's a beautiful thing, right? We're all gonna get together, we're gonna hold hands, and somehow that's gonna cure hunger. The illusion that we're contributing to something that actually is making change, as opposed to something that kind of makes us feel better and absolves us of our responsibility to enact actual change.
We made it! Because y'all sleep too much.
I always thought of the family in terms of certain archetypal foursome. You know, Adelaide is the leader, the captain. Zora is the warrior. She acts before she thinks, and she kicks ass. Gabe is the fool. Even though on the surface he looks like he might be the leader or the warrior. And Jason is the wizard. He's the magician.
What are you doing?
It's a magic trick. I left it here last year.
Okay, let's see it.
You know, I have this kind of concept of Jason that he can sort of see through the veil. You can see these moments where he's observing his mother, and he's meant to be a little step ahead of us, the most clever of us, that is sort of figuring out something more to Adelaide's story than we see. You're walking into this unknown place. It's kind of like, yeah, and it's kind of cool, too. There are several stories involving a woman or a young girl going to this other land that inspired some of the imagery in this movie. So Alice in Wonderland, even The Wizard of Oz, and the Nutcracker stands out.
Would you ever wish you kept dancing?
Sometimes, yeah.
The pas de deux is a dance that's supposed to be done by two people. It's a duet. Adelaide, in her recital, she decided that she was going to do a version of it with just the one of her. The implication, of course, is that they are actually doing a duet, one above and one below. The animals in my stories represent this battle between science and religion for me. You know, I tend to like to explore the gray area where religion and magic and the unexplainable meet science. Between the two, you have an abomination, a metaphor for humanity. One of the motifs of this movie is the rabbits. They symbolize a lot of different things. The main connection to me was Easter. This story is a dark Easter of sorts. Red is the Messiah who is, you know, rising from the hole that she was left for dead. The deers I used in Get Out and the rabbits I used here, you know, woodland animals where there's something wild and unbridled behind their eyes, but there's also a distinct lack of what makes a human.
We're human too, you know. Eyes, teeth, hands, blood. Exactly like you.
Part of what makes a human being is that we value our family more than the one across the street. We can't be beings of good exclusively when in our DNA we have this idea of tribalism. That's at odds with any attempt to, you know, paint ourselves as inherently good beings. We're animals. We were built a certain way by evolution. These things are in our DNA for survival. And right there, the notion of good and evil versus the notion of what we are for survival, well, that's right where this idea of science and religion meet. And the human monster is the abomination in the middle.
That's crazy. Been having so many crazy coincidences lately.
In this movie, the idea of coincidence, you can look at the event that is the creation of the tethered, sort of creating a rift in the fabric of the universe. As they get closer, coincidences pop up. Part of it, to me, I think, is what we're ready to see and our hunger to connect the dots, but to suggest that when you have one of those little small connections that seems perfectly serendipitous, it might not be. It might be more. Religion is scary to me. There is an us tied into the fabric of most religions. The connection to the Jeremiah 11:11, you know, I think sort of represents Red's voice, this war cry of sorts. Pluto, you know, Jason's doppelganger backing into the fire with his arms stretched out, sort of in the crucifix position. And Red names her family. Abraham, she chose a name that as a 7-year-old child, you know, she learned was the great emancipator. And that's kind of her family's role, is this sort of royal family in a demonstration of freedom and emancipation. Obviously, there's a biblical connection there, too.
And then there was us.
There's this expanding idea of what the word us means. Us can mean many different things. You know, the only thing consistent about the idea of us is when you have an us, you have a them. Every one of us and our doppelganger share a soul. We have a fated connection that isn't always exact. I described it as being a sort of poetic connection. Fate and the magic of the soul doesn't work in a sort of scientifically dependable way, which is one of the reasons the underpass as a concept didn't work for the creators.
We got a good actor here, we got a good actor here.
I think all great horror has a social message of some sort. When it works, it's because it's tapping into something that we're suppressing. As a society, as individuals, horror is often grounded, which is the way I love to do comedy as well. Allow something crazy to be going on, but you try to marry it with reality. And so that's really what I'm going for here. I have a definite world of symbols that I'm exploring and trying to say with this film, all relating to our duality as human beings, the guilt and sins that we bury deep within ourselves.